Today on the Hour of Power, Maren Angelotti, out of her struggles of raising a child with ADHD, shares powerful tips that can help parents everywhere in her new book entitled Different Minds, Seeing Your ADHD Child Through God's Eyes.
But as my children grew, I knew that they had gifts that weren't being shown within the education system. And my heart would break. I would spend nights crying myself to sleep, wondering what's going to happen with these children.
Thank you, Maren. Thank you for being here. And she's written this amazing book, and I hope you all will, especially if you have a child or a grandchild. If you're a teacher, it's called Of Different Minds, Seeing Your ADHD Child Through God's Eyes. Isn't that, oh, I love the title alone. So, Maren, what inspired this book?
This book came out of a mother watching her children struggle in school. And I have a feeling a few of you out there can relate to what I went through. But as my children grew, I knew that they had gifts that weren't being shown within the education system. And my heart would break. I would spend nights crying myself to sleep, wondering what's going to happen with these children. But I have to encourage you and let you know that they are now 26, 24, 22, and 18, and they are all living wonderful lives, and they are using their learning differences for God in their lives. So that is why I wrote the book, but also to help parents know how to navigate that journey that God has put you on. It's not something to be feared, but something to be embraced.
I wish I had had your book to read when I was a young mom, because Christopher, our second, we learned late in life, had ADD. I actually knew he had it, and I thought, what's the point of going ahead and having him diagnosed? I know what they're going to tell me, and I understand that pain, absolutely. There were times I was asked by teachers to come in and observe, because I think they wanted to point out to me how much in trouble he was.
Right.
And so as I watched him struggle in first grade just to write his name, he'd write the C, and then he'd look around the room, and then he'd be redirected by the teacher. He'd put the H down.
Right.
And as I observed this as a mom, I had to flee the room at the classroom, find a restroom where I just bawled and sobbed and thought, what's going to happen to my son?
I so want to encourage any parents or grandparents out there that hear a little piece of your journey up here, to make sure that you get your children diagnosed and actually get the proper testing. So many of us as parents journey through this fog for years and years, not knowing just what is it? I can't pinpoint it. And maybe then their children get into the adult years and there's a whole nother series of problems that arise. So as parents, we have to make sure that we put our pride to the side and allow God to come into our families and open our hearts to be able to know what it is that's going on with our children. And then let God be the center of that family. He will guide you, He will point you in the direction, and in my book I give you those step-by-step directions to get where you need to go.
Yeah, it is a wonderful, wonderful message. And we tend as parents, I see it with, now that I'm an educator, and these parents sit across the desk from me, and I see the pain in their eyes and the denial. You talk about one chapter, the sea of denial.
The sea of denial. We can all float in there for a long time.
Yeah, we do. And part of it is, too, I think parents are afraid. They think if my child is diagnosed and has put this label on of me having learning differences, then that means my child is abnormal. Maybe that means I must be abnormal or less than or a failure, and there's no hope for this child. And I love what you say in your book is that each child is a wonderful, unique, that, you know, that whole Psalm 139, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and not to put them in this box that education tries to put them in.
And remember, too, that these children learn differently, and their environments need to be shown that if you need to do homeschooling, do that. If that child is wired for the public school setting, great. But don't think that it has to be a sure fit for each student. Be aware that you can open that boundary and see where are they going to fit in to blossom the way God intended them to be, and give the gifts back to the kingdom of God.
I think if parents and grandparents can take away one thing from between the two of us, is that we represent moms who with children with learning differences, and our children are very, very successful today. is successful not just as a trade or anything like that. I mean successful in higher education.
Exactly.
My son is tackling Hebrew in in seminary. So I never thought he'd even be able to read when he was little.
I have to tell you, I have a daughter who recently graduated from college, and she had big struggle with ADD, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. And you probably wonder, what is that? That is the struggle with understanding numbers. So those of you that are struggling with math, you now know that there's a real word for that. So for her life, it was a struggle. She had to work always that much harder to get the grades. But as she walked across that stage to receive her diploma, she mentions in the book, I felt like time stood still. And I realized that all the negative things that happened in my life, those teachers that couldn't understand me, thank you for that, because that has molded me who I am today. So she was able to take the negative and see how God has worked that to be a positive in her life. So she is now in the field of her choice and living a wonderful life.
Now, Maren, my message title this morning is Lessons in Grace Learned the Hard Way.
That's right.
And, you know, some of the most important lessons that we learn in life have to be learned the hard way. And so I'm going to ask you, having learned the hard way, which lesson in grace have you learned through this journey?
Okay, the lesson I had to learn was don't yell, don't lose your temper, because these individuals process slower. So I had to learn process slower. Let God work slowly within our lives instead of rush, rush, rush. I have to be there, I have to do this, and fit into my mold. Slow down, hear what God has to say, and allow our children to grow in the image that He wants them.
Well put. Thank you so much, Maren. God bless you.